The Nuisance. In the chaos of the Empire's greatest war, Grand Regent Thrag was crushing through the Resistance's armies. Thrag was not like other Viltrumites. He had been selected and trained from birth to be the strongest organism his species had ever produced. In thousands of years of conquest, against enemies, against monsters, against everything the universe could throw at a god, nothing had ever made him even bleed. Not once. So when a giant lion-looking alien with a mace came roaring at him through the battlefield, Thrag barely turned his head. He swatted the creature out of the air, tossing him aside like a misbehaving house cat, said one single word, "Nuisance," and went back to his actual enemies. Years later, after the Empire had fallen and the disgraced Emperor drifted through deep space in exile, plotting his return, something found him. It was the same beast he had tossed aside years ago. The fugitive Emperor turned to face it, and the lion smiled at him, with every tooth it had. The way you smile at a meal you've been waiting years to eat. But what Thrag failed to realize back on that battlefield was that he hadn't flicked away a normal animal. He had accidentally pissed off one of the strongest beings in the universe. You see, the creature's name was Thok, born on the planet Dornan, a world of lion-like warriors where combat isn't a profession, it's the entire culture. But Thok was a problem even there. He fought so many battles on his home world that he ran out of them. Nobody left could challenge him. Nobody could hurt him. For a creature whose entire existence revolved around the thrill of a real fight, that was a fate worse than death. So he exiled himself and wandered the galaxy under a new name, Battle Beast, searching for exactly one thing, an opponent strong enough to finally give him a death worth having. That is the creature the Emperor of the Universe dismissed as a pest. Being called a nuisance by the strongest Viltrumite alive wasn't an insult to Battle Beast, it was a love letter. And now, the Battle Beast wanted to battle the monster. What followed was one of the most violent one-on-one duels in recorded history. Not a fight that lasted minutes. A fight that lasted days. The Emperor ripped into him with everything that had conquered a universe. But the cat just kept smiling wider, because every wound was a gift. Battle Beast swung his mace into the most durable body ever created and felt it give. He cracked the perfect specimen open piece by piece, tearing wounds into a man who had never once been wounded. Trading damage neither of them had ever been forced to feel. They beat each other into paste, with no food, no rest, and no referee. And somewhere in the middle of it, the impossible happened. The Nuisance started winning exchanges. When Thrag finally, barely ended the duel, he was so mangled that he had to drape his opponent's hide over his own ruined body just to hold himself together. Yeah, the strongest Viltrumite who ever lived limped away, wearing the loser like a bandage. Battle Beast didn't survive the duel, but he passed away grinning, having finally found the worthy death he'd spent centuries shopping for. And the Emperor's wounds never got the chance to fully heal before his own final battle against the man who would finish what the cat started. The Vermin. Commander Nolan had never been handed a mission this insulting. At the height of the Viltrumite Empire, when thousands of conquered worlds paid tribute to the species of living gods, Nolan was one of its most decorated warriors. He was a soldier who had once put down a planetary rebellion in a single weekend and kept the throne of its king as furniture. Beings like him tore down civilizations, but today the Empire had sent him to wipe out a planet of animals. His squad descended through the clouds of the quiet green planet at the far edge of Imperial space with an extermination order in hand. Then they got their first look at the targets. Snarling, four-legged beasts the size of a fully grown man, all muscles, claws, and far too many teeth, prowling below. They were big, but they were just animals. Mindless wildlife, about to be cleared by soldiers who demolished mountain ranges as a warm-up. Nolan's squad touched down, rolled their shoulders, and waded into the colonies of the prey, barehanded, expecting to be done by lunch. But there was just one problem with the mission briefing. The Empire's files had left out exactly one line about this species. You see, the creatures were called Ragnars, and Ragnars are one of the only living things in the known universe capable of killing a Viltrumite. In packs, these things drag down the most durable beings in existence and chew on them like corn on a cob. And Nolan's squad was standing in the middle of thousands of them. The first soldier didn't even understand what was happening. A beast latched onto him and he laughed, right up until he felt his skin being torn off. Viltrumite skin, the material that shrugs off nukes, being destroyed by teeth. He swung his free arm to knock the creature loose, but 3 more hit him from behind, then 6. Then, the laughing stopped. Nolan watched one of the strongest beings in the universe disappear under a pile of snapping jaws. He gave the order no Viltrumite commander had ever given before: fall back. But it didn't matter. The pack moved like one animal with 1,000 mouths, cutting off every soldier who tried to rise, dragging flying gods out of the air by their legs, and pulling them back down into the swarm. Nolan fought the way legends fight. He caved in skulls. He threw beasts the size of men across the valley. For every one he ended, 5 more climbed over its body to reach him. His soldiers' screams went quiet, one by one. And by the time the commander finally tore himself free of the ground and made it into the sky, he was the only member of the squad still breathing, bleeding from wounds no enemy had ever managed to put on him. Listening to the screams of his elite squad being butchered below, Nolan returned to the Empire alone, and the Viltrumites did what Viltrumites do. They sent a second squad, but they were torn apart as well. They sent a third, bigger, angrier, and better briefed. But only a single survivor clinging to a transport hull returned. After that, the mightiest military force in the history of the universe quietly canceled the invasion plans. The race that conquered 1,000 worlds, attempted pest control, failed 3 times, and spent the rest of their reign pretending it didn't exist. No monuments for the lost squads, no mention in the records, just a blank space on the map where the Empire of Gods accidentally picked on their worst nightmare. The myth. In the final hours of the Viltrum Empire's last great war, in the burning stretch of space above the planet Viltrum itself, a soldier named Vacker was carving through the Resistance's front. Vacker was one of the last 50 Viltrumites in existence. He was a veteran. He had survived the Great Purge as a child by ending his own instructor. He outlived the plague that erased millions of his kind, and personally broke the armies of more worlds than he bothered to remember. He kept a tally of conquered planets scratched into his armor, and he'd run out of room twice. Beings like him did not lose fights. Gods like him did not even have fights. They had chores. And in the chaos of battle, Vacker spotted his easiest chore yet. Drifting calmly at the edge of the war zone was a scrawny green alien with 3 eyes, sitting on what appeared to be a floating motorcycle. The little man wore a sealed breathing suit. In a battle where Viltrumites floated around bare-faced like it was a pool party, this meant he couldn't even survive the vacuum on his own. How pathetic. He was small, he was frail, and he was holding one sad little pistol. Vacker locked on and charged at full speed, fists ready, already picking out his next target. The distance closed in seconds. The drifter didn't run. He didn't weave. In fact, he didn't even flinch. But there was one slight mistake Vacker made. The little man on the bike wasn't any ordinary scavenger. You see, every empire has its ghost stories, and the Viltrumites had exactly one. For centuries, soldiers had whispered about a drifter who rode between the stars, appearing whenever the Empire's grip was tightest and vanishing before anyone could prove he existed. The stories said he was older than some of the Empire's colonies and that no prison had ever held him. It was rumored that he carried a weapon that could pierce absolutely anything in existence: steel, mountains, and even Viltrumite skin. The Empire's official position was that Space Rider was a bedtime story for weak Viltrumites, but Vacker was going to find out the truth. The green alien simply raised the humming little pistol, leveled it at the god flying towards his face, and waited. One click. A beam of light passed clean through the charging soldier's chest, and Vacker's tally stopped counting forever. One of the last 50 gods in the universe ended mid-flight by a man on a motorcycle. The drifter calmly swiveled to the next Viltrumite and clicked again. The panic spread so fast that the Grand Regent of the entire Empire had to abandon his command, fly across the battlefield, and personally punch the man off his motorcycle just to make it stop. But if you thought this target that the Viltrumites picked was bad, just wait until you see what the next one did. The Old Man. Thousands of years ago, in the council chambers of the planet Viltrum, Emperor Argal was deciding how to erase a civilization before lunch. Argal was the first emperor of the Viltrumite Empire, the strongest of his era, a ruler so revered that his statue was the only statue permitted on the entire planet. That day, his war council had gathered to answer an insult. A conquered race called the Relonians had struck back against their occupiers, bombing an imperial extraction site. The council's response was unanimous. make an example of them, crush their world so completely that no planet could ever raise its hands again. Every warrior at the table agreed. Every warrior except one old counselor at the end of it, who argued for negotiation, for mercy. The room looked at him the way you'd look at something stuck to your boot. In a culture built on strength, mercy wasn't an option, it was weakness. The council laughed him down, finalized the extermination order, and the emperor himself pulled aside his greatest soldier, Thrag, and gave a quiet instruction on the way out. If the old man's weakness persists, deal with him. Just like that, the gentlest voice on Viltrum had been marked for removal, and nobody in that room lost a second of sleep over it. But there was only one problem with calling Thetis weak. You see, before he was on the council, Thetis was one of the strongest Viltrumites who had ever lived, a high warrior of the Argal era, a soldier so ruthless in the Empire's early campaigns that Thrag himself, an engineered perfect specimen, had fought beside him and respected him. Thetis had spent centuries conquering worlds for the Empire and understood what it did to the conquered. The council thought they had embarrassed a soft old man. What they had actually done was show the most dangerous mind on the planet that the Empire did not respect him. That night, Emperor Argal returned to his private chambers alone. He never saw the counselor waiting in the shadows, and he never expected the dead. The strongest Viltrumite of his era, the father of the Empire, the man with the only statue on the planet, ended in his own throne room in seconds. By the one member of his council everybody had stopped taking seriously. It was the first act of rebellion in the history of the species, and the Empire's response only proved Thetis right. At the Emperor's funeral, Thrag rose as Grand Regent, branded the fugitive the Betrayer, and ordered Viltrum to purge itself of weakness, a culling of their own kind that lasted 100 years and hardened the Empire into something crueler than before. But the Betrayer was still alive, and he wasn't done. In exile, he founded the Coalition of Planets, an alliance of the Empire's victims. Hundreds of worlds united under the leadership of a kindly old man, whose superpower appeared to be organizing planets together. Behind his weak facade, he built a weapon his entire species was too arrogant to imagine. A virus engineered over centuries, grown from his own Viltrumite DNA, tailored to kill his own kind. They called it the Scourge. The race that feared nothing physical watched their invincible bodies fail from the inside. The virus killed millions, and only 50 members of the species remained alive. 50. The old man the Empire ridiculed and was ready to kill pulled off the most successful act of revenge in history. The old man got their first emperor, their homeworld, and 99% of their species. All because a room full of gods decided that mercy meant weak. The Viltrumite Empire spent thousands of years believing strength was the only thing in the universe that mattered. Then, the wildlife ate their soldiers, a house cat broke their emperor, a bedtime story shot them, and one old man they laughed out of a meeting deleted 99.99% of their species. Seems like the moral of today's stories is pretty simple. Stay humble and always respect the people around you.